Hey everyone! If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Your support means the world to me and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of hope and redemption. Quick question: where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and subscribe. Let's jump into the story. The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Ashford estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, creating rivers that distorted the manicured gardens beyond. Inside the main study, 7-year-old Violet Chen pressed her small hands against the cold glass, watching the droplets race downward. Her mother, Mei Chen, had worked as the estate's housekeeper for 2 years, but this was the first time Violet had accompanied her to work. A pipe burst at their apartment building had left them with no choice. "Mama, can I explore?" Violet's voice carried the musical lilt of childhood curiosity, her blonde hair falling in waves around her cherubic face with bright hazel eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. May looked up from polishing the mahogany desk, her worn hands momentarily still. "Stay in this wing only, Bao Bei, Mr. Ashford is in meetings downtown all day, but we must be respectful. Touch nothing valuable." Violet nodded solemnly, her pink dress swishing as she skipped toward the hallway. The estate was a labyrinth of wealth, each room more magnificent than the last. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Oil paintings in gilded frames lined the walls like sentinels guarding secrets. To a 7-year-old from a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Stamford, it was a palace from her storybooks. She found herself drawn to a room at the end of the corridor, its double doors slightly ajar. Inside, the walls were painted a soft blue and toys lined built-in shelves. Expensive toys, the kind Violet had only seen through store windows. A race car track sat assembled in one corner, frozen in time. But what captured her attention was the portrait hanging above the fireplace. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, stared out from the canvas. His eyes were gray-blue like storm clouds over water, and his smile held a mischief that made Violet smile back. He wore a navy suit with a red tie, looking formal, yet somehow playful. Something about his expression reminded her of the kids at her school before they learned to hide their joy. Violet noticed a red ball near the portrait's base, probably left by another child who'd visited. She picked it up and tossed it gently upward, catching it with both hands. On the third throw, her coordination failed her. The ball sailed toward the portrait, and Violet lunged to catch it, her small fingers grasping at air. Her shoulder collided with the heavy frame. Time seemed to suspend as the portrait tilted, then fell, crashing to the floor with a sound that echoed through the empty room like thunder. The canvas tore diagonally across the boy's chest, the rip creating a jagged wound through the painted fabric. Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands trembled as she stared at the destruction she'd caused. This was it. Her mother would lose her job. They'd be thrown out, all because she couldn't catch a stupid ball. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. She looked around frantically, as if the perfect solution might materialize from the expensive wallpaper. Then she saw them. Markers scattered on the small desk by the window. Her child's mind, still innocent of complex deception, reached for the simplest solution. She picked up the pink marker, her favorite color, and leaned toward the torn canvas. The words came from somewhere deep in her imagination, from all the stories her mother told her about people watching over their loved ones. With careful, deliberate strokes, she wrote across the tear, "I'm alive, Daddy." She stepped back, marker cap between her teeth, examining her work. In her 7-year-old logic, she'd somehow made it better. If the boy couldn't smile from the portrait anymore, at least he could send a message. It made perfect sense to her. She'd fix the sad with something happy. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality of what she'd done crashed over her. She'd destroyed something precious, something irreplaceable. The tears she'd been holding back spilled down her cheeks. She needed help. She needed to tell someone who could fix this. Her mother's phone sat on the desk where May had left it while carrying cleaning supplies. Violet knew her mother's passcode. May had shown her in case of emergencies. This was definitely an emergency. With shaking fingers, she unlocked the phone and scrolled through recent calls until she found the one labeled, "Mr. Ashford, work." The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered, crisp with authority. "May? Is everything all right at the estate?" Violet's voice came out small and frightened, words tumbling over each other in desperate confession. "Mr. Ashford? This is Violet, May's daughter. I'm so sorry. I broke something really bad. I broke the picture of the boy, and I wrote on it, and I'm really, really sorry, but sir." She paused, gathering courage for the words that would change everything. "Your son is alive." The line went silent. Violet could hear her own breathing, ragged and scared, echoing back through the phone. Then, "What did you say?" "The picture. I accidentally broke it, and I wrote that he's alive because I felt bad, and I'm sorry. Where exactly are you?" The voice had changed, become something urgent and sharp, all the authority replaced with raw desperation. "The blue room with all the toys. I'm sorry, I'm really. Don't move, don't touch anything else. I'm coming right now." The call ended. Violet stood holding the phone, her cheeks wet with tears, completely unaware that her clumsy accident and childish remedy had just cracked open a 3-year-old mystery. In her innocence, she couldn't know that those 3 words, "Your son is alive," would soon unravel a conspiracy that had kept a father and son apart. She only knew she'd been very, very bad, and Mr. Ashford sounded very, very upset. Outside, the November rain continued its relentless assault on the windows, as if the sky itself was weeping for secrets about to be exposed. 28 minutes later, Christopher Ashford burst through the estate's main entrance like a man possessed. His Bentley sat at an awkward angle in the circular driveway, driver's door still open, engine running. His $1,000 shoes left wet tracks across the Italian marble foyer. The normally composed CEO of Ashford Technologies looked unhinged, his salt and pepper hair disheveled, his charcoal suit jacket soaked through from the rain he'd run through from his downtown office. Mei Chen appeared from the kitchen, her face pale with worry. She'd found Violet 15 minutes earlier, sobbing in the blue room beside the destroyed portrait. "Mr. Ashford, I'm so deeply sorry. I will pay for the restoration. I should never have brought her here. But Christopher pushed past her, his eyes wild with something May couldn't identify. Not anger. Something else. Something that looked dangerously close to hope. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his breath coming in ragged gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion. The blue room door stood open, and there stood the tiny blonde girl in the pink dress, her face streaked with tears, looking absolutely terrified. And there, behind her, was the portrait. Christopher's legs nearly gave out. He gripped the doorframe for support, his knuckles white. The diagonal tear across his son's chest. The childish pink letters scrawled across the canvas. "I'm alive, Daddy." For 3 years, he'd walked past this portrait every day. 3 years of grief counseling, of sleeping pills, of waking up and remembering all over again that Andrew was gone. 3 years since his brother Marcus had called from the hospital with the devastating news. The pneumonia had been too aggressive. Andrew's weakened immune system couldn't fight it. His 7-year-old son was dead. Christopher had questioned everything at the time. He'd demanded to see Andrew's body, but Marcus had been adamant. The pneumonia had ravaged him, left his small body so damaged that seeing him would only create nightmares. "Remember him as he was," Marcus had pleaded. "Vibrant, alive. Don't let your last memory be of suffering." The death certificate had looked official, signed by doctors Christopher had no reason to doubt. He'd been in Singapore, drowning in shock, and his own physician had prescribed sedatives that left his mind foggy. By the time clarity returned 2 weeks later, the cremation was done, the small private memorial service over, and Marcus had handled everything with such seeming compassion that Christopher felt guilty for questioning him. Marcus had insisted on keeping Andrew's death private. "The media will turn his death into a spectacle," his brother had warned. "Billionaire's son dies tragically. They'll dig through everything, invade Andrew's memory. Let's protect him. No obituary, no public announcement, just family and close friends." Christopher, too shattered to fight, had agreed. Now he wondered if that privacy had been part of Marcus's plan all along. But now, staring at those pink letters written by a child who couldn't possibly understand their significance, Christopher felt something shift in his chest. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. 3 months before Andrew's supposed death, his son had developed a strange habit. Every time Christopher left for a business trip, Andrew would draw pictures with messages. "Come back soon, Daddy," or "I'll be good while you're gone." Always in bright colors, always with hearts and smiley faces. The handwriting had been messy, childish, exactly like these pink letters. And there was something else. A conversation he'd dismissed as meaningless at the time. The week before Christopher left for Singapore, Andrew had seemed anxious, clingy. "Promise you won't forget about me," he'd whispered during their bedtime routine. "Forget you? That's impossible, buddy. You're my whole world." "But what if I'm gone when you come back?" Christopher had laughed, kissing his son's forehead. "Where would you go? This is your home. Uncle Marcus says sometimes people go away and never come back, like Grandma and Grandpa." At the time, Christopher had attributed it to childhood anxiety about loss. Andrew had been homeschooled due to his immune deficiency, which sometimes made him more sensitive to separation. He'd talked to Andrew's therapist, who'd assured him this was normal for a child who'd lost his mother at birth and had no grandparents. But now, those words took on a sinister dimension. Had Andrew somehow sensed what Marcus was planning? "Violet." Christopher's voice came out strangled. He knelt down to the little girl's level, forcing his face into something less terrifying. "Sweetheart, I'm not angry. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Why did you write those words?" Violet's lower lip trembled. "I broke your picture and I felt really bad because the boy looked so happy. And my mama always says that people we love watch over us from heaven. So I thought maybe if I wrote something nice, it would make it less sad. But I made it worse, didn't I?" Christopher's throat tightened. "You wrote 'I'm alive, Daddy.' Why those specific words?" "Because." Violet wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Because in my stories, when someone is gone, sometimes they come back, and daddies are always looking for their kids. I thought if he was alive somewhere, he'd want you to know. So you wouldn't be sad anymore." The simplicity of her logic pierced Christopher's heart. From the mouths of babes. He stood abruptly, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. He scrolled to Marcus's number, then stopped. Something told him not to call. Not yet. Not until he knew more. Instead, he dialed his head of security. "Trevor, I need you to pull every piece of documentation related to Andrew's death. Hospital records, death certificate, cremation paperwork, everything Marcus handled. I need it in 1 hour." "Sir, is everything—" "1 hour, Trevor, this is priority 1. He ended the call and turned to May, who stood in the doorway looking bewildered. "Mrs. Chen, I need you to take Violet home. You're both safe. You've done nothing wrong." He pulled out his wallet, extracting 5 crisp $100 bills. "For the inconvenience, and for your daughter's insight." May's eyes widened. "Mr. Ashford, I don't understand. Your daughter may have just given me back something I thought I'd lost forever." He looked back at the torn portrait, at those pink letters that had cracked open his carefully constructed grief. "I need to make some calls. Take the rest of the week off. Paid." After they left, Christopher stood alone in the blue room, the rain still hammering against the windows. He pulled out his phone again and opened the photos from 3 years ago, the ones from Andrew's 7th birthday party, just 2 weeks before his supposed death. He zoomed in on one particular image, Andrew and Marcus, uncle and nephew, Marcus's hand resting on the boy's shoulder. Something about Marcus's smile in that photo suddenly looked wrong. Too tight, too controlled. His phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Found something odd in the cremation records. The funeral home address doesn't exist. It's a vacant lot in Bridgeport." Christopher's blood turned to ice. He typed back, "Find out what funeral home actually operates from that address, and Trevor, start with the assumption that nothing about Andrew's death was real." The Ashford Technologies headquarters occupied 43 floors of gleaming glass and steel in downtown Hartford. From his corner office on the top floor, Christopher had a view that stretched across the city to the Connecticut River beyond. Tonight, that view held no appeal. Trevor Morrison sat across from Christopher's desk, spreading documents across the polished surface like a dealer laying out cards in a deadly game. Trevor was former FBI, a man Christopher had hired 5 years ago precisely because he was thorough, discreet, and had a bloodhound's instinct for uncovering lies. "The death certificate is a forgery," Trevor said without preamble. "A good one, but a forgery nonetheless. The attending physician's signature belongs to a Dr. Harold Chen, who worked at Hartford General. He died 2 years ago of natural causes, but more importantly, he retired 4 years ago. He couldn't have signed anything 3 years ago." Christopher's jaw clenched. "Continue." "The funeral home, Peaceful Rest Memorial Services, it's a shell company, registered 3 years and 2 months ago, dissolved 3 years ago. It existed for exactly 6 weeks, just long enough to process 1 cremation." Trevor pulled out another document. "The cremains your brother gave you?" "I had them tested. They're not human. They're a mix of wood ash and ground limestone, standard funeral industry substitute." The room spun. Christopher gripped the edge of his desk. "Marcus gave me a box of fireplace ashes and told me it was my son." "Yes." Trevor's voice was gentle but firm. "There's more. I pulled financial records for your brother. 3 years ago, right around Andrew's supposed death, Marcus made a cash withdrawal, $80,000, withdrawn in 4 installments over 2 weeks from different banks. Untraceable." "Exactly. But here's what's interesting. 6 months later, he purchased a vacation home in the Berkshires. Paid cash. $750,000. Christopher's eyes narrowed. "I gave Marcus $300,000 as his share of our parents' estate when they died. He's never been good with money. I assumed he'd spent it years ago. He did spend it. Gambling debts, according to bank records I accessed. He was broke 2 years before Andrew disappeared. That Berkshire's house. That's new money from somewhere." Trevor leaned forward. "Christopher, 3 years ago, you were planning to step down as CEO. You'd announced it internally. You were going to transition the company to a board structure with Marcus as your recommended successor." The memory hit Christopher like a physical blow. "The Singapore deal. I'd told Marcus it would be my last major acquisition. After that, I was going to focus on being a father. Andrew was getting older, and I was missing everything. His homeschooling, his therapy sessions, his life. And if you'd stepped down healthy and whole with a living son, Marcus would have been CEO eventually. But with you devastated by grief, unable to step down, drowning in work as a coping mechanism, Marcus gets to run the company with me too broken to interfere, and when I eventually die or truly retire, he inherits everything." Christopher's voice was hollow. "My son was an obstacle to his ambition." Trevor pulled out another file. "Andrew's school records. You homeschooled him due to his immune condition, which explains why no teachers came forward after his supposed death. And Marcus convinced you to keep Andrew's death private. No obituary, no public announcement beyond a small memorial service. He said it was to protect your privacy, protect Andrew's memory from media vultures. You agreed because you were too destroyed to think clearly. He isolated Andrew's death," Christopher whispered. "Made sure no one was looking for him." "Exactly. And here's the critical piece. I contacted St. Mary's Orphanage in New Haven. 3 years ago, a boy matching Andrew's description was brought in. Anonymous drop-off. No paperwork, no identification, just a medical alert bracelet for immune deficiency." Christopher's heart stopped. "What?" "When the boy arrived, he had no identification, no medical records. Sister Margaret, the director, said they treated that as normal. Many abandoned children come to them this way. His bracelet told them about his condition. They never thought to search for a missing child because there were no missing child reports filed. Marcus made sure there was nothing to connect the boy to his past. No one was looking for Andrew Ashford because Andrew Ashford was supposedly dead. Is it him? Is it Andrew? Sister Margaret said the boy is healthy, happy. They've been treating his condition. He's never been adopted because of the medical expenses. But Christopher, she said something strange. The boy has dreams. Dreams about a man with gray eyes. Dreams about a telescope and stars. Christopher's vision blurred. I'm going there, right now. Christopher, wait. We need to think this through. If Marcus finds out, I don't care about Marcus right now. If my son is in that orphanage, I need confirmation. Trevor stood. Then I'm coming with you. but we approach this carefully. We can't traumatize the boy if it is Andrew. The drive to New Haven took 30 minutes. St. Mary's Home for Children sat on a quiet street, a 3-story brick building with white shutters. Christopher's hands shook as he parked. They met briefly with Sister Margaret, and Christopher explained everything. Her hand flew to her mouth when he showed her photos of Andrew. Dear Lord, we call him Noah. He's been here 3 years. Mr. Ashford, the resemblance, how did we not see it? Because no one was looking, Christopher said. Can I see him? She led them to an observation window overlooking a recreation room. 20 children played inside. Then Christopher saw him. A boy sat alone in the corner reading, but his eyes kept drifting to the window, watching clouds. He was taller, his face more mature, but those eyes, those gray-blue eyes that matched Christopher's own, were unmistakable. The way he tilted his head, the slight furrow between his brows when concentrating, those were Andrew's gestures, preserved across 3 stolen years. Christopher's legs buckled. Trevor caught him. That's him, Christopher gasped. That's my son, that's Andrew. He pressed his palm against the glass, separated from Andrew by inches and 3 years of lies. The boy wore a watch, the Timex Christopher had given him for his 7th birthday. He kept it, Christopher breathed. All this time. Sister Margaret's voice was soft. He's protective of the younger children. He tells them stories about stars, about how everything in the universe is connected. He says someone important once told him that. I did, Christopher whispered. When his mother died. When he was afraid of being alone. They stood in silence watching. Finally, Sister Margaret spoke. We need to prepare him. Our psychologist, Dr. Sarah Chen, will help. This has to be done carefully. How long? Days. Perhaps a week. Mr. Ashford, the shock of sudden revelation could damage him further. Christopher nodded, though every instinct screamed to take his son home immediately. I understand, but I need to leave things for him. Books he loved. His favorite hot chocolate brand. Things that might trigger memories. That might actually help, Sister Margaret agreed. Familiar objects could unlock what trauma has blocked. As they prepared to leave, Christopher looked back. His son, alive, real, so close, yet still unreachable. But he'd waited 3 years. He could wait a few more days to do this right. Outside, Christopher called Trevor. I want surveillance on Marcus, every movement, every call, and Trevor, start building a case. Kidnapping, fraud, forged documents. I want him buried. Consider it done. Christopher drove home in silence, Andrew's face imprinted on his mind. Tomorrow they'd begin the careful process of bringing his son back from the darkness Marcus had cast him into. Tonight, he had only the torn portrait and a renewed purpose burning in his chest. The hunt had begun. And this time, Christopher Ashford wasn't stopping until his son came home. The next morning, Christopher delivered packages to St. Mary's personally. Books Andrew had loved. The specific brand of hot chocolate with mini marshmallows, a star chart they'd used together. Sister Margaret accepted them with a knowing smile. Dr. Chen will introduce these gradually, she explained. We're telling Noah that someone from his past has been searching for him. We're preparing him gently. Christopher nodded, his throat tight. How is he this morning? Restless. He woke from a dream and asked me something he's never asked before. He asked if it was possible for dead people to come back. Her eyes glistened. I told him that sometimes the people we think we've lost are closer than we know. Christopher's hands trembled as he held a worn copy of The Universe in Your Hands, Andrew's favorite astronomy book. He'd read it to his son hundreds of times, always doing silly voices for the planets. The pages were dog-eared at Andrew's favorite chapters, sticky notes marking passages about black holes and nebulae. Sister Margaret, when you give him this book, there's a bookmark inside. It's a photo of us from his 6th birthday. He's blowing out candles shaped like rockets. I need you to watch his reaction when he sees it. Of course, Mr. Ashford. Dr. Chen believes visual triggers might be the key to unlocking deeper memories. Over the next 3 days, Christopher called every evening for updates. Each conversation brought small miracles and heartbreaking setbacks. Day 1. Andrew held the astronomy book for 20 minutes, crying without understanding why. Day 2. He tasted the hot chocolate and whispered home before his expression clouded with confusion. Day 3. He found the photograph bookmark and stared at it for so long that Dr. Chen worried he'd slipped into a dissociative state. But then something remarkable happened, Dr. Chen told Christopher on the phone that third evening. He touched the photo and said, "I know this boy. He's me, but I'm not him anymore. Mr. Ashford, he's beginning to integrate his past self with his present identity. That's a crucial step in trauma recovery. What does that mean for seeing him? Can I? Soon. Very soon. But Christopher, I need you to understand something. When you do reunite, Andrew might not react the way you expect. He might not run into your arms. He might not cry or smile. 3 years of survival instincts have taught him to be cautious, to protect himself. Don't interpret his caution as rejection." Christopher spent those 3 days in a fog. Work became impossible. Trevor handled everything at Ashford Technologies, fielding questions about Christopher's sudden absence with vague explanations about family matters. Marcus called 17 times. Christopher ignored every call. He couldn't risk tipping his brother off before Andrew was safely home. On the 4th morning, Christopher was drinking coffee in his study when his phone rang. Dr. Chen's number. "He's ready," she said without preamble. His memories are surfacing. This morning he stared at the compass he's kept all these years and said, "My father gave me this. His name is Christopher." Mr. Ashford, his mind is releasing the trauma. He's starting to remember. Christopher knocked over his coffee in his rush to stand. The hot liquid spread across important documents, but he didn't care. "I'm coming right now." "Wait. Before you leave, I need to tell you exactly what to expect. Andrew knows you're coming. He asked if you'd be angry that he forgot you. I told him no, but he needs to hear it from you. He's terrified that you've been searching for him out of obligation, not love. Marcus did profound psychological damage, Christopher. He convinced Andrew that he was unlovable, that his existence was a burden." Christopher's vision blurred with rage and grief. "I'll kill him. I swear to God No. You'll show your son that Marcus was wrong. You'll show him what real love looks like. That's how you fight back." The drive to New Haven felt eternal. Christopher had made this trip dozens of times now, but today every red light seemed to last hours. Every slow driver a deliberate obstacle. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles ached. At a stoplight 3 blocks from St. Mary's, he caught sight of his reflection in the rearview mirror. When had he gotten so many gray hairs? When had those lines around his eyes deepened into crevasses? 3 years of grief had aged him a decade. But today that ended. Today he got his son back. When he arrived, Dr. Chen met him at the entrance. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an air of calm competence that Christopher desperately needed. "Before you see him, you need to understand what's happening," she said, leading him to her office. Andrew's mind blocked memories to protect him from trauma. "Your brother told him you were dead, that he was abandoned because he wasn't wanted. The psychological damage was severe, but the love between you was stronger. His subconscious held on to pieces. The stars, the telescope, the connection. Now those pieces are becoming whole again." "What did Marcus do to him?" Christopher's voice shook. How did he traumatize Andrew so completely? Dr. Chen's expression darkened. She pulled out a file thick with notes. "From what Andrew's been able to tell me, your brother used sophisticated psychological torture. He told Andrew you died in a car accident. He said it was Andrew's fault, that you'd been distracted thinking about him when you crashed. He made Andrew believe that talking about his past, remembering you, would somehow hurt you more in the afterlife. The guilt and fear created a mental block. It's a form of coercive control used by kidnappers and cult leaders." Christopher's fists clenched so hard his fingernails drew blood from his palms. Marcus hadn't just stolen Andrew. He'd weaponized a 7-year-old's love and turned it into a prison. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Chen continued, her voice gentle but unflinching. "We believe Marcus drugged Andrew in the first few days, probably benzodiazepines, sedatives that made him confused and compliant. We found traces in Andrew's medical records from when he first arrived at the initial facility. By the time the drugs wore off, the psychological manipulation had taken hold. The confusion from the drugs made Andrew doubt his own memories, made Marcus's lies seem more plausible. Where was this initial facility? A place called Riverside Children's Home, about 90 miles from Greenwich. It shut down 8 months after Andrew arrived. Financial irregularities, complaints of inadequate care. The children were redistributed to various facilities. Andrew came here. Records show your brother visited Riverside twice in those first 6 months, always requesting private conversations with Andrew. After the facility closed and Andrew was transferred here, the visit stopped. Marcus had accomplished his goal. Andrew's memory was effectively erased and the trail had gone cold. Christopher felt sick. So Marcus kept him close enough to monitor, to ensure the memory block held, but far enough that I'd never accidentally encounter him. Exactly. It was calculated, methodical. Mr. Ashford, your brother is a sociopath. The level of planning, the lack of remorse, these aren't the actions of someone who made an impulsive mistake. This was premeditated psychological murder of a child's identity. Is he ready to see me? Dr. Chen studied him for a long moment. He's terrified and hopeful in equal measure. He's in a private room right now practicing what he wants to say to you. He's written a list of questions on notebook paper, 37 questions about why you abandoned him, whether you'll want him now that he's broken his word, whether you're only here out of guilt. Christopher, you need to be prepared for distrust. It's not personal. It's survival. I understand. Just please let me see my son. They walked through the orphanage halls. Christopher noticed details he'd missed before. Cheerful murals painted by children, a bulletin board covered in crayon drawings, a small library where a volunteer was reading to 3 young kids. This had been Andrew's home for 3 years. These walls had witnessed his tears, his confusion, his slow adaptation to a life he'd never chosen. They stopped outside a door with a small window. Through it, Christopher saw Andrew sitting at a table, the compass clutched in his hands, his expression intense with concentration and fear. His son, taller now, his blonde hair darker, his face losing its baby roundness, looked so vulnerable that Christopher wanted to burst through the door and never let go. Let me prepare him, Dr. Chen said softly. She entered. Christopher watched as she spoke to Andrew. The boy's head snapped up, his eyes wide, his lips moved. My father? Now? He's here right now? Dr. Chen nodded, gesturing toward the door where Christopher stood. Andrew stood slowly, his whole body trembling. He pressed his hands flat against the table as if needing its stability. Christopher saw his lips moving, realized Andrew was giving himself a pep talk. His son's courage, his determination to face this moment despite his terror, made Christopher's heart clench. Dr. Chen opened the door and stepped aside. Christopher stepped into the room. For a moment, they stood frozen, staring at each other across 10 feet and 3 years of stolen time. Andrew's face cycled through emotions: disbelief, recognition, hope, fear, anger, longing. Christopher saw himself in Andrew's eyes, in the shape of his jaw, in the way he held his shoulders when bracing for disappointment. Andrew, Christopher whispered, his voice breaking. I'm here, buddy. I never stopped looking for you. You're real? Andrew's voice cracked. It was deeper than Christopher remembered, edging toward adolescence. Uncle Marcus said you died. He said it was my fault. He said I killed you. None of this is your fault. Marcus lied about everything. I've been alive, searching for you every single day since he took you from me. You are my whole world, Andrew. You always have been. But I couldn't remember. Andrew's composure cracked, tears spilling down his cheeks. I tried so hard, but everything was foggy, like trying to catch smoke. I'd have dreams about someone who loved me, and I'd wake up and the feeling would fade. I thought I was going crazy. That's not your fault. What Marcus did to you, the lies he told, the drugs he gave you, the fear he created. Your mind was protecting you the only way it knew how. You didn't forget me because you wanted to. You forgot because remembering hurt too much. But Andrew, I need you to know something. Christopher took one careful step closer. I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Not when I thought you were dead. Not when months passed without a clue. Not when everyone told me to move on. You were always my son. You are always my son. Andrew's eyes filled with tears. I dreamed about you. Every night. A man who showed me stars and told me I was made of the same stuff as galaxies. He said I was brave and smart and good. Was that real? Or did I make it up? That was real, that was us. Do you remember Orion's belt? Our constellation? Something shifted in Andrew's expression. A dam breaking, memories flooding through gaps in the walls trauma had built. The 3 stars. You said they were like us. You, me, and Mom watching over each other even when we're apart. You remember. I'm starting to. Andrew took a tentative step forward, then stopped. Dad? Is it really you? Or is this another dream? Christopher closed the distance between them and dropped to his knees, putting himself at Andrew's eye level. He held out his hands, palms up, offering but not demanding. It's really me. Touch my hands if you need to. Feel that I'm real. Andrew reached out slowly, as if Christopher might vanish. His fingers touched Christopher's palms, then gripped tight. You're warm. In my dreams you were always cold, like fog. But you're warm. I'm real. And I'm never letting you go again. Never. Not for anything. Andrew's carefully constructed composure shattered. He crashed into Christopher's arms, his small body, not so small anymore, but still his little boy, shaking with 3 years of suppressed grief. I tried to remember. I tried so hard. It hurt so much to try. Uncle Marcus said if I kept trying to remember, I'd go crazy, that my brain was broken. Your brain isn't broken. You're not broken. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Christopher held his son, one hand cradling Andrew's head, the other wrapped around his back. He could feel Andrew's heart racing, could feel every tremor, every sob. I've got you. I've got you, buddy. You're safe now. They held each other, 3 years of separation dissolving into this single moment. Christopher felt Andrew's tears soaking his shirt, felt his son's desperate grip, as if Andrew was afraid Christopher might disappear. Christopher's own tears fell freely, splashing into Andrew's hair. I have so many questions, Andrew said against Christopher's shoulder, his voice muffled. Why did Uncle Marcus do this? Where have you been? Why couldn't I remember? Am I still your son even though I forgot you? You never stopped being my son, not for 1 second, and we'll answer every question you have, all of them. But right now I just need to hold you, is that okay? Yes, please don't let go yet. I won't, not until you're ready. They stayed like that for several minutes, neither willing to break the embrace. Dr. Chen quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Finally, Andrew pulled back slightly, though he kept one hand fisted in Christopher's shirt as if maintaining a physical connection. The compass, Andrew said. You gave it to me. I remember now. You were going to California for a week. I was scared you wouldn't come back. Before a business trip. You were worried I'd get lost or forget about you. So you'll always find your way home, Andrew recited, the memory returning fully. I remembered the words, but not what they meant. Not until today. Home meant you. You were my home. And you're mine. Always. Andrew's face transformed as more memories flooded back like a dam finally breaking after years of pressure. The telescope. We looked at stars every Tuesday night, and you made hot chocolate with way too many marshmallows. 6 marshmallows. You counted every single time and told me it was a choking hazard. And you couldn't sing lullabies because you were tone deaf. Andrew's laugh was watery but real. So you'd tell me constellation stories instead. You made up this whole mythology about Mars the warrior falling in love with Venus, and that's why they orbit near each other. And you corrected my astronomy constantly because you knew more about planets than I ever would. You called me your little astronaut. You said someday we'd name a star together. Andrew's expression clouded. But then Uncle Marcus said you died, and I'd never get to name that star. Christopher pulled Andrew close again. We will name that star, I promise you. Everything Marcus stole from us we'll get back. Every Tuesday night, every hot chocolate, every terrible bedtime story. We'll get it all back." They spent the next hour in that room, Andrew's memories returning in waves, some clear and sharp, others hazy and incomplete. He remembered birthday parties and camping trips and the way Christopher always burned breakfast on weekends. He remembered their bedtime routine, how Christopher would check under the bed for monsters, even though Andrew insisted he was too old for that. He remembered the day Marcus took him, the confusion, the terror, the moment when his mind simply shut down to protect itself. "Uncle Marcus visited me twice after I got to St. Mary's," Andrew said quietly. "Both times he asked if I remembered anything about my past. When I said no, he looked so relieved. I didn't understand then, but I do now. He wanted to make sure I'd forgotten you completely. He can never hurt you again. He's gone from our lives forever. I promise you that." Sister Margaret knocked softly and entered. "Mr. Ashford, I've prepared Andrew's release paperwork. Given the circumstances, the fraudulent death certificate, your documentation proving paternity and Andrew's own wishes, I can release him into your custody today. Right now, if you'd like." "Today?" Andrew looked between them, hope and fear warring in his expression. "I can go home today? Right now? If you want to," Christopher said gently. "I know this is overwhelming. If you need more time—" "No." Andrew gripped Christopher's hand with surprising strength. "I want to go home. I want to see my room. Is it still there? The blue room with the stars on the ceiling? Every toy, every book, every glow-in-the-dark star exactly where you left them. I couldn't change anything. It was like keeping you alive. Then yes, I want to go home, please." The drive to Greenwich was surreal. Andrew sat in the passenger seat. When had he gotten tall enough for the front seat, looking at everything with wide, wondering eyes? Fragments of recognition lit his face like fireworks. "That's the road to Dr. Williams's office," he said as they passed a familiar intersection. "He was my pediatrician. He always gave me stickers of planets. He retired last year, but Dr. Patel is wonderful. We'll schedule your checkup for next week. Get your medications adjusted, make sure everything's working right with your immune system." "I've been taking the shots," Andrew said. "The nurses at St. Mary's were really good about it. They never made me feel weird about needing medicine." As they drove, Andrew asked questions, a torrent of them, as if 3 years of curiosity had been dammed up and was now flooding free. What happened to Mrs. Patterson, his old tutor? Was the big oak tree in the backyard still there? Did Christopher still drink coffee with too much sugar? Had he adopted any pets? Christopher answered each one, his heart swelling with every question. This was his son, curious, thoughtful, desperate to reconnect with the life he'd lost. When they pulled up to the estate, Andrew gasped audibly. His hands pressed against the window. "I remember. The big windows. The garden where we played catch. You always threw the ball too high and I'd miss and you'd laugh. You got better at catching. By your 7th birthday, you could catch anything I threw. My room. Is my room really the same? Come see." Inside, Mei Chen was waiting with Violet, who'd begged to meet the boy from the portrait. The little girl hid behind her mother, suddenly shy in the presence of the miracle she'd helped create. Andrew stared at Violet, recognition dawning. Then he laughed. A sound like music, like life returning to a silent house. "You wrote on my picture, didn't you? You wrote, 'I'm alive, Daddy,'" Sister Margaret told me. "That's why my father found me." Violet nodded nervously, peeking out from behind her mother. "I'm sorry I broke it. Are you mad?" "Mad? You're the reason I'm home. You're the reason I got my dad back." Andrew knelt down to her level. "You brought me home, Violet. You're a hero." Violet's face lit up with a smile that could power cities. "Really? I'm a hero?" "Really. Thank you for being brave and writing that message. Thank you for bringing me home." Christopher led Andrew upstairs, his heart pounding. Would the room trigger good memories or painful ones? Would Andrew feel welcomed or overwhelmed? Andrew stood in the doorway of the blue room, drinking in every detail. His fingers traced the doorframe as if confirming its reality. "It's exactly the same. Like time stopped. Like you pressed pause on everything and waited for me. That's exactly what I did. I came here every day. Sat in your chair, talked to you, told you about my day. I couldn't let you go, Andrew. Even when everyone said I should pack up your things and move on, I couldn't do it. Andrew walked slowly into the room, touching everything. His desk, his bookshelf, his telescope by the window. He picked up the half-finished drawing of a whale from his desk. I was going to finish this for your birthday. I wanted to show you I could draw a humpback whale with perfect flukes. You can finish it now. We have all the time in the world, all the time we need. Andrew sat on his bed, running his hands over the comforter, a deep blue covered in silver stars. I dreamed about this room, but in the dreams it was always empty like a museum. Now it's real. You're real. He looked up at Christopher, vulnerability and wonder mixing in his expression. I'm really home. You're really home. As the sun set, they sat together on Andrew's bed, looking through photo albums. With each picture, more memories returned, more connections rebuilt. By the time darkness fell outside, Andrew was talking freely about their life before, the gaps filling in, the 3 stolen years becoming just a painful chapter rather than the whole story. Dad, Andrew said as Christopher tucked him in, a ritual they'd both missed desperately. The word dad felt like a gift every time Andrew said it. When I was at St. Mary's, even when I couldn't remember your face or your name, I knew someone loved me. I could feel it like warmth in my chest, like something tethering me to the world. Was that you? Every single day I stood by your window and sent you love across the distance. I told the universe to keep you safe, to remind you that someone was looking for you. I felt it. It kept me from giving up. On really bad days, when I felt so alone I could barely breathe, there was this feeling, like someone was holding my hand even though no one was there. That was you, wasn't it? I'd like to think so. Love doesn't stop just because people are apart. It finds ways through. Christopher kissed Andrew's forehead, breathing in the scent of his son's shampoo, different from what they'd used before, but underneath it, that essential Andrew smell remained. Sleep now, buddy. Tomorrow we'll go to Jerry's diner for breakfast. Jerry's? Andrew's eyes lit up. Do they still have the chocolate chip pancakes? With whipped cream and strawberries, your usual. That's still there? Jerry's is still there? Some things don't change. The important things stay the same, waiting for you to come back to them. Like you. Like me. As Andrew drifted toward sleep, Christopher sat in the chair by the window, the same chair where he'd spent countless nights keeping vigil. He watched his son breathe, watched the peaceful expression that came with true safety, and marveled at the miracle of this day. His phone vibrated softly. A text from Dr. Chen. How is he? Christopher typed back. Home. Finally, truly home. Thank you for giving me back my son. You never lost him. He was just waiting for you to find him. That's what love does. It waits. Christopher looked at Andrew, already asleep, one hand still clutching the compass, the other stretched out as if reaching for something in his dreams. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tonight was perfect. The next morning brought complications Christopher had anticipated but hoped to delay. His phone rang at 6 a.m., jarring him from the first real sleep he'd had in years. Patricia Walsh, his attorney, her voice grave. Christopher, Marcus lawyered up overnight. He's claiming Andrew ran away and got lost. Says he searched extensively but assumed the boy died of exposure. He's denying everything. The kidnapping, the drugging, all of it. Christopher carefully closed his bedroom door so Andrew wouldn't overhear. I have evidence. Trevor recorded our confrontation. Marcus admitted everything. That recording might not be admissible depending on Connecticut's consent laws for recording conversations. But we have other evidence. The forged documents, the shell company, the medical evidence of the drugging, Andrew's testimony. The DA wants to meet with you and Andrew this afternoon. They're building a kidnapping case, but Christopher... Patricia's voice softened. You need to prepare Andrew. He'll have to testify eventually. Facing Marcus in court will be traumatic. After the call, Christopher found Andrew in the kitchen, eating cereal at the breakfast bar and staring at everything as if seeing it for the first time, which in a way he was. He'd changed into clothes Christopher had left out, a t-shirt and jeans that were slightly too small. They'd need to go shopping. Hey buddy, how'd you sleep? Better than I have in 3 years. Real pillows. A real bed. I forgot what that felt like. Andrew paused, his spoon hovering over his bowl. Dad, I remembered something else last night. Uncle Marcus had gambling debts. I overheard him on the phone once, maybe a month before he took me. Someone was threatening him about money he owed. He sounded scared. I'd never heard him sound scared before. Christopher sat down heavily on the stool next to Andrew. That explains the $80,000 Trevor found. Marcus was desperate. Desperate enough to sacrifice you for his future, for his freedom from those debts. Why did he hate me so much? What did I do wrong? No, Andrew. Listen to me. Christopher turned Andrew's stool so they were face to face. You did nothing wrong. Marcus didn't hate you. He just valued his ambition, his survival, his comfort more than anything else. Including family, including basic human decency. That's not a reflection on you. That's his failure, his moral bankruptcy. You were a sweet, loving 7-year-old who just wanted his dad. You were never the problem. But if I hadn't needed so much attention, if my immune stuff hadn't made me need to be homeschooled, maybe he wouldn't have. Stop, right there. Christopher's voice was firm but loving. Marcus made a choice. He chose to commit an evil act. Nothing you did or didn't do caused that choice. He could have talked to me about his debts. He could have asked for help. He could have done 1,000 things that didn't involve traumatizing a child. He chose the path he took. That's on him, not you. Dr. Chen arrived mid-morning for Andrew's first therapy session at home. Christopher waited anxiously in his study, trying to work but unable to focus on anything but the murmur of voices from the living room. When Andrew emerged 2 hours later, his eyes were red but his expression was clearer, more settled. Dr. Chen says I'll have bad days, Andrew said, standing in the doorway of Christopher's study. Days where the memories hurt. Days where I'm angry at Uncle Marcus or scared you'll disappear again. She says that's normal. And those days are completely valid. I'll be here through all of them. The good days, the bad days, the terrible days. All of them. She also said I might feel guilty. Like I should have tried harder to remember, or fought harder against Uncle Marcus. Like maybe I wanted to forget because remembering was too hard. Christopher pulled Andrew into a hug. Listen to me. You were 7 years old when he took you. 7. A child. What Marcus did to you was torture. Psychological, emotional torture. The fact that you survived with your spirit intact, that you held on to pieces of us even when you couldn't remember why, that you kept that compass and that watch even when they were just mysterious objects, that's not weakness. That's incredible strength. You survived, Andrew. That's what matters. That afternoon, they met with District Attorney Helen Rodriguez in her downtown Hartford office. She was a stern woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, but her expression softened when she saw Andrew. You must be Andrew. I'm Helen. I'm going to help make sure your uncle faces justice for what he did to you. Andrew, to his credit, sat up straight and met her eyes. Thank you, ma'am. Over the next hour, Andrew recounted everything he could remember. The DA recorded it all, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Andrew described Marcus's lies, that Christopher had died, that it was Andrew's fault. He described the foggy feeling from the drugs, how the world had seemed dreamlike and unreal for those first weeks. He described the psychological manipulation, the fear Marcus had instilled. Marcus told me that if I tried to find my father, something terrible would happen, Andrew said quietly, his hands clenched in his lap. He said my dad had a weak heart and the shock of seeing me alive might kill him. I was so scared that trying to get home would hurt the person I most wanted to reach, so I stopped trying. I let myself forget. Helen Rodriguez looked at Christopher with sympathy and rage in equal measure. That's textbook coercive control. It's used by domestic abusers, kidnappers, cult leaders. Mr. Ashford, we have enough to charge your brother with kidnapping, child endangerment, fraud, administering drugs to a minor, coercion, and a list of other charges. He's looking at 20 years minimum, possibly more. Good, Christopher said coldly. Make sure he gets every single one of them. Make sure he never has the chance to hurt another child. That evening, Trevor arrived with news that made Christopher's blood sing with satisfaction. Marcus tried to flee the country. Airport security stopped him at JFK about 2 hours ago. He had a ticket to Brazil, non-extradition country. He also had $80,000 in cash in his luggage and a fake passport. He's in federal custody now. Christopher felt savage satisfaction. What about his assets? Frozen. The Berkshire's house, his bank accounts, his stock options, everything. He won't be able to hire expensive lawyers. And Christopher, I found something else. Something you need to know. Trevor pulled out more documents. Remember those gambling debts Andrew mentioned? I tracked them down. Marcus owed $200,000 to a crime syndicate operating out of New Jersey. Not small-time bookies, organized crime. They'd threatened his life. There's a recorded phone call from 3 weeks before Andrew's kidnapping where someone tells Marcus he has 30 days to come up with the money or they'll make an example of him. So he stole Andrew to save his own skin. He destroyed my son's childhood, traumatized him for life to cover his own mistakes. It appears so. But here's the silver lining. Those same people are willing to testify against Marcus. They're cooperating with the FBI on other charges, and they're happy to add Marcus to their list of people they're testifying against. It establishes motive, shows premeditation, makes his story about Andrew running away completely fall apart. After Trevor left, Christopher found Andrew on the roof, the small widow's walk accessible from the 3rd floor that they'd converted into a stargazing platform years ago. His son stood at the railing, looking up at the stars beginning to emerge in the twilight sky. Found your old spot, Christopher said, joining him. The November air was cold, but neither of them cared. I used to come up here at St. Mary's, too. They had a roof access that only a few of us knew about. I'd sneak up there at night and look at the stars. I couldn't remember why it felt important, but it did. It was like coming home even though I didn't know where home was. Every clear Tuesday. That was our tradition. Our sacred time. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken and stars appear. The city lights of Greenwich created light pollution, but the brightest stars still shone through. Andrew pointed suddenly, his finger steady. There, Orion's belt, the 3 stars, our constellation. The 3 of us. You, me, and Mom, always watching over each other no matter how far apart we are. Dad? Andrew's voice was small. Can I ask you something? Anything. Always. At St. Mary's, there was this little kid named Tommy. He was 5, and he was scared all the time because his parents left him there and never came back. I used to tell him stories about stars, about how everything in the universe is connected, how we're never really alone even when it feels like we are, about how love travels faster than light and reaches across any distance. Andrew turned to look at Christopher. I couldn't remember where I learned that, but it felt true, like something important someone had taught me. Did you teach me that? Yes, Christopher said, his throat tight. When your mom died, you were so scared of being alone. You were just a baby, but as you got older and understood death more, you'd get these night terrors. You'd wake up screaming that everyone was going to leave you. So I told you we're all made of stardust, that the universe connects everything, that your mom was watching from the stars, that you'd never truly be alone because I'd always be with you, even when we were apart. You were, Andrew said softly, wonder in his voice. Even when I couldn't remember you, I felt connected to something, someone, like there was an invisible string tying me to somewhere safe. It was you, wasn't it? You were reaching for me the whole time. Every single day I stood here, right here where we're standing now, and I looked at these same stars and I told you I was still searching, that I'd never give up. That love doesn't end just because people are separated. I heard you, Andrew whispered. I didn't know it was you, but I heard something. Some nights at St. Mary's I'd wake up and feel this warmth, like someone was sitting on my bed even though the room was empty. I'd hear this voice telling me to hold on, that someone was coming. Was that real? Or did I imagine it? Christopher pulled Andrew close, resting his chin on top of his son's head. I'd like to think it was real. I'd like to think that love is strong enough to cross any distance, to whisper through any darkness. Whether it was real or whether your own strength was giving you hope when you needed it most, Either way, you survived. You held on. You're here. They stayed on the roof until the sky was fully dark and stars filled the darkness like diamonds on velvet. They named constellations, shared stories, rebuilt the connection that Marcus had tried so hard to sever. Andrew told Christopher about the other kids at St. Mary's, about the family he'd built there out of other lost children. Christopher told Andrew about the business deals he'd done, the success he'd achieved, and how none of it had meant anything without Andrew there to share it with. When they finally went inside, Andrew paused at his bedroom door, his hand on the knob. "Dad, tomorrow can we finish my whale drawing together? And then maybe start a new picture?" "Anything you want." "What kind of new picture?" "I want to draw us. You and me looking at stars together, with the invisible string connecting us. So I never forget again what we mean to each other. You won't forget, but we'll draw it anyway. We'll draw 100 pictures, 1,000. We'll create new memories to fill all the spaces Marcus tried to empty. Promise? Promise, now sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. We have pancakes to eat and pictures to draw and a whole life to rebuild. I love you, Dad. I know I only just remembered that I love you, but I do. So much. I love you too, buddy. More than all the stars we can see. More than the universe is wide. You're my everything." That night, Christopher lay awake in his room, listening to the sounds of his house with Andrew in it. The soft breathing from down the hall, the occasional creak as his son shifted in sleep, the ordinary, miraculous sounds of his child being home. His phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. "Are you awake?" "Yes, can't sleep." "Too happy to sleep?" "Is that weird?" "Not weird at all." "Want to come to my room? We could watch a movie like we used to." "Really? Even though I'm 10 and too old for that?" "You're never too old to spend time with your dad." 5 minutes later, Andrew appeared in Christopher's doorway, the compass still clutched in one hand. They settled into Christopher's king-sized bed, pulling up one of Andrew's favorite movies from years ago, Finding Nemo, which had been his obsession at age 6. "We used to watch this every Friday," Andrew said, wonder in his voice as the opening credits rolled. "I'd make you do the voices. You were terrible at the seagulls." "Mine, mine, mine," Christopher attempted, making Andrew laugh so hard he snorted. They fell asleep halfway through the movie, Andrew's head resting on Christopher's shoulder, the compass between them like a talisman. In the morning, Christopher woke first and spent several minutes just watching Andrew sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression, the way his son's chest rose and fell, the miracle of his presence. They were home. Finally, impossibly, blessedly home. 2 weeks later, Christopher stood in a courtroom watching Marcus led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His brother looked haggard, older, the arrogance and charm that had defined him gone. His expensive suit had been replaced with prison clothes. His perfectly styled hair was unkempt. When Marcus's eyes met Christopher's across the courtroom, there was no remorse, only resentment, rage, and something that looked like genuine surprise that Christopher had actually moved against him. Marcus had always believed Christopher was weak, sentimental, too soft to fight back. He'd underestimated the depth of a father's love. The arraignment was swift but thorough. The DA presented overwhelming evidence: forged documents, Trevor's recording of Marcus's confession, testimony from the crime syndicate about the gambling debts, medical evidence of the drugs used on Andrew, and Andrew's own written testimony about the psychological torture. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd spent 20 years on the bench, looked at Marcus with open disgust. "Mr. Marcus Ashford, you are charged with kidnapping in the first degree, child endangerment, fraud, forgery, coercion of a minor, administering drugs to a minor, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence against you is substantial. Your own recorded confession, combined with the testimony from multiple witnesses and forensic evidence, paints a picture of calculated, premeditated child abuse. Given your attempted flight from the country and the severity of these crimes, I'm denying bail. You will remain in custody until your trial, which is set for 3 months from now." Marcus's lawyer, a public defender since his assets were frozen, tried to argue, but the judge cut him off with a sharp gesture. As Marcus was led away, he turned to Christopher one last time. The courtroom was silent enough to hear his words clearly. You chose him over family, over everything we built together, over our blood. Christopher stood facing his brother across the courtroom. His voice was steady, clear, echoing in the silent room. You stopped being family the moment you laid hands on my son. You stopped being my brother when you decided your ambition was worth more than a child's life. And Marcus? Andrew is my blood. Andrew is my family. He is everything. You? You're nothing to me now. You're just a man who's going to pay for his crimes. Marcus's face twisted with hatred, but the bailiffs pulled him away before he could respond. As the courtroom doors closed behind him, Christopher felt something release in his chest. 3 years of grief, rage, and desperate hope all exhaling at once. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Ashford, how does it feel to find your son alive? Will you pursue civil damages against your brother? What do you say to other families with missing children? Trevor and courthouse security escorted Christopher through a back exit. In the car, Christopher pulled out his phone. A text from Andrew, who'd stayed home with Dr. Chen. Is it over? Is he going to prison? The trial isn't for 3 months, but he can't hurt you now. He's locked up and staying locked up. You're safe. Good. Dr. Chen and I made cookies. They're a little burned, but they taste okay. Come home soon? On my way. Save me the burned ones. Those are my favorite. That evening, Dr. Chen stayed for dinner. Pizza that Christopher had delivered from Andrew's favorite place, a local spot that made pies with fresh basil and too much cheese, exactly the way Andrew liked. They ate on the patio even though it was cold, wrapped in blankets. Andrew sandwiched between Christopher and Dr. Chen, laughing about the cookies they'd attempted to make. Later, after Dr. Chen left, she pulled Christopher aside. We need to talk about something important. Andrew has survivor's guilt. Guilt? For what? None of this was his fault. Not guilt about what happened to him, guilt about the other children at St. Mary's. He's been asking about them constantly. He feels guilty that he had a father searching for him while they don't. He wants to visit them, to help them somehow. Christopher, this is a good sign. It means he's processing his trauma by trying to transform pain into purpose. But you need to be careful. If he throws himself too much into helping others, he might use it to avoid dealing with his own healing. Christopher thought about Andrew's questions over the past week. Careful inquiries about the other kids, whether they'd be okay, whether anyone was looking for them. What do you suggest? Let him visit St. Mary's. Let him maintain those connections. Those children were his family for 3 years. But also consider something bigger. Andrew mentioned he'd like to help children like him, kids who are lost or forgotten. What if you established a foundation, something that helps orphaned children, that funds medical care for those with special needs, that works to reunite families? It could be therapeutic for Andrew to see his pain being transformed into something positive. And Christopher, it could be your way of honoring what those 3 years taught you about what really matters. The next Saturday, Christopher and Andrew returned to St. Mary's. The children who'd been Andrew's friends for 3 years rushed to him the moment he walked through the door. Christopher watched his son hug each one. Little Tommy, who was scared of the dark. Sarah, who had asthma like Andrew's immune issues. Marcus, unfortunate name, who'd arrived at St. Mary's the same week Andrew had. You came back. Tommy practically climbed Andrew like a tree. You said you'd come back and you did. I promised, didn't I? And I keep my promises. Andrew looked at Christopher. Dad, this is Tommy. He's the one I told you about. He likes stories about astronauts. Christopher knelt down to Tommy's level. Andrew's told me a lot about you. He says you're brave. Tommy shook his head solemnly. I'm not brave, I cry a lot, Rye. Crying doesn't mean you're not brave, Christopher said. Being brave means being scared and doing hard things anyway. And you're here, being a good friend to Andrew, being a good kid even when things are hard. That's brave. Sister Margaret pulled Christopher aside while Andrew played with his friends. What you're doing, the medical fund you've established, it will change lives. We've never had resources like this. We can finally afford the specialized care some of these children need. We can hire more staff. We can create programs. Mr. Ashford, you're transforming tragedy into hope. Andrew wanted it. He said every child deserves someone fighting for them. I'm just making that possible. That afternoon, in a conference room at St. Mary's, Christopher met with his attorney and sister Margaret to officially establish the Andrew Ashford Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to finding families for orphaned children, funding medical care for those with special needs, and supporting reunification services for families torn apart by circumstances or crime. The initial funding came from Christopher's personal fortune, $10 million to start, with annual contributions of $1 million more. When Christopher told Andrew about the foundation that evening, his son's face lit up with something transcendent, joy mixed with purpose. You're naming it after me? Because you understand what it means to be lost and found. You understand what hope means. You understand that every child deserves someone who won't give up on them. Over the following weeks, life found a new rhythm. Andrew returned to homeschooling, working with tutors Christopher hired to help him catch up on 3 years of education. But catch up wasn't really the right term. Andrew had continued learning at St. Mary's, devouring books from their library, teaching himself subjects because learning was what he did when he felt scared or lost. The tutors discovered that Andrew was actually ahead in several subjects, particularly astronomy, mathematics, and English literature. He's gifted, the math tutor told Christopher after 2 weeks. I mean truly gifted. He's working at a high school level in some areas. I think his brain used learning as an escape mechanism during his trauma. He turned to books and knowledge when he couldn't turn to people. Andrew and Violet became unlikely friends. The 7-year-old girl who'd accidentally saved him visited weekly for playdates. They'd draw together, create elaborate stories about adventures and heroes, build forts out of blankets. Christopher would hear them laughing and feel his heart heal a little more each time. One afternoon, Christopher overheard their conversation while delivering snacks. Do you think I'm a real hero? Violet asked, her voice uncertain. The realest kind, Andrew said seriously. You know why? Because you didn't know you were being a hero when you did it. You just saw something broken and tried to fix it. That's what real heroes do. They see something wrong and they try to make it right even when they're scared. I was so scared. I thought Mr. Ashford would be angry. My dad's never angry at the right things. He's angry at Uncle Marcus for hurting me. But you gave me back my dad. You gave my dad back his son. That's not something to be angry about. That's something to be grateful for forever. The trial came 3 months later. It lasted 2 weeks. Christopher and Andrew attended every day, sitting in the front row, a united front against Marcus's lies. Andrew testified for 3 hours, his voice steady, his facts clear. He described the drugging, the psychological manipulation, the fear. He described his life at St. Mary's, the confusion and grief of not knowing who he was. He described the moment he remembered Christopher, how it felt like coming back to life. Marcus's defense tried to paint Andrew as confused, as misremembering due to trauma. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the drugs, the shell company, the gambling debts, the attempted flight, the recorded confession. Marcus's own lawyer seemed to know it was hopeless. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. On the charge of kidnapping in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Marcus to 25 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 15. Mr. Ashford, you committed one of the most calculated, cruel crimes I've seen in my 20 years on this bench. You didn't just kidnap a child. You tried to erase him. You weaponized his love for his father against him. You traumatized him so severely that his mind shut down to protect itself. You stole 3 years of a child's life and 3 years of a father's joy. There is no sentence that can undo the harm you've caused, but I can ensure you never have the opportunity to harm another child. 25 years with no parole for 15. Take him away. As Marcus was led out, he didn't look at Christopher or Andrew. His shoulders were slumped, his spirit finally broken. He'd gambled everything and lost. Outside the courthouse, Christopher and Andrew stood on the steps, facing the media one last time. Christopher had prepared a statement, but when the moment came, he let Andrew speak. My Uncle Marcus did a really bad thing. Andrew said, his voice clear despite his nervousness. He hurt me and he hurt my dad, but he didn't win. My dad never gave up on me. He kept looking even when everyone said I was dead. And there was this little girl named Violet who accidentally broke my portrait and wrote something that brought me home. So what I want to say is, if you're looking for someone you lost, don't give up. If you're lost and hoping someone is looking for you, hold on. Love is stronger than lies. Hope is real. And sometimes miracles happen. The questions came fast after that, but Trevor guided them to the car. On the drive home, Andrew was quiet, processing. "Are you okay?" Christopher asked. "Yeah, I feel bad for Uncle Marcus. Is that weird? He hurt me so much, but I still feel bad for him." "That's not weird. That's you being the person I raised you to be, someone with compassion, even for those who hurt you. But Andrew, feeling sorry for someone doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you have to forgive them. I don't think I can forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever, but I can decide not to let what he did destroy the rest of my life. Dr. Chen says that's healthy. Dr. Chen is right. And Andrew, I'm so proud of you. The way you testified, the way you handled yourself, you were so brave. I was scared the whole time. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." 6 months after Andrew came home, Dr. Chen declared him ready to attend regular therapy sessions just twice a month instead of twice a week. He's integrated his trauma. He understands what happened wasn't his fault. He's building a new life while honoring his past. Christopher, you've given him the space and love to heal. That's what he needed most. 1 year after Violet wrote those pink letters on the torn portrait, Christopher had it professionally restored, but he asked the restorer to leave the words visible beneath a protective layer of glaze. "Those words brought my son home," he explained. "They're part of our story now. They're not damage, they're transformation." The portrait hung in the blue room, which was no longer a shrine but a living space again. Andrew's new drawings covered the walls, pictures of whales and nebulae, portraits of his friends from St. Mary's, and one special drawing that held pride of place above his desk. A father and son looking up at stars, connected by lines of golden light that stretched between them and the cosmos. In Andrew's neat handwriting at the bottom, "Some bonds can't be broken, not by time, not by distance, not by lies." On a clear Tuesday evening 14 months after their reunion, Christopher and Andrew stood on the roof, telescopes set up side by side, hot chocolate with 6 marshmallows cooling beside them. It had become their ritual again. Every Tuesday, weather permitting, they'd stargaze together. "Dad?" Andrew asked, his eye pressed to the telescope lens tracking Jupiter across the sky. "Do you think Uncle Marcus understands what he did wrong?" Christopher considered carefully. Andrew deserved honesty, always. "I think Marcus understands he got caught. Whether he understands the depth of his betrayal, the cruelty of his actions, the lives he damaged, I don't know. Some people can't see beyond themselves, can't feel remorse for their actions. They only regret the consequences. I feel sorry for him sometimes. Is that weird? No. That's you being the person I raised you to be, the person you chose to become, someone with compassion even for those who hurt you. But Andrew, feeling sorry for someone doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you have to forgive them or forget what they did. I don't think I can forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever. But I can decide not to let what he did define my whole life. I can decide that I'm more than what happened to me." Christopher pulled his son close, this boy who was becoming a young man before his eyes. "You're wiser than most adults I know. You're going to do amazing things with your life." They watched the stars in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes when two people are completely at ease with each other. Andrew broke it first. "Dr. Chen asked me today what I want to be when I grow up. I told her I want to help kids like me, kids who are lost. That's a beautiful dream. She said I could be a therapist or work with foster systems or run a foundation like ours. But Dad, whatever I do, whatever path I take, I want to help people find their way home. Like you never stopped trying to find me, like Violet helped me find you. I want to be that person for other people. You'll do amazing things, Andrew. You already are. The way you visit St. Mary's every week, the way you talk to the younger kids, the way you give them hope, you're already making a difference. Because you showed me how. You showed me what it means to never give up on someone you love. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, Andrew fell asleep against Christopher's shoulder, exhausted by stargazing and hot chocolate and the simple joy of being together. Christopher carried his son downstairs, getting harder as Andrew grew taller and heavier each month, and tucked him into bed with practiced ease. "Love you, buddy," he whispered, brushing Andrew's hair back from his forehead. "Love you too, Dad," Andrew mumbled, already half asleep. "See you in the morning. See you in the morning. Always." Christopher walked to his own room, stopping at the window to look out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, 3 stars aligned in Orion's belt, just as they had throughout the darkest years. The universe had witnessed his grief, his desperate searching, his refusal to give up hope. And in the end, love had won. A child's innocent message, written in pink marker across a torn portrait, had shattered 3 years of lies, had brought a lost boy home, had proven that some bonds can't be broken, not by time, not by distance, not by trauma, not by the cruelest betrayals. Christopher thought about Marcus, locked in a cell, his ambition having cost him everything. His brother had gambled on Christopher's grief being permanent, on Andrew being erased forever. He'd lost that gamble in the most complete way possible. He thought about Andrew sleeping peacefully down the hall, building a future from the ashes of stolen years. His son was thriving, growing taller, regaining lost weight, laughing more easily, dreaming about college and careers and making a difference. He thought about the Andrew Ashford Foundation, which had already helped 17 children find permanent homes and provided medical care for 32 more. Those numbers would grow. Andrew's pain was being transformed into purpose. And he thought about Violet, the 7-year-old girl whose clumsy accident and innocent heart had set everything in motion. Christopher had established a college fund for her, full tuition, room, and board for whatever school she chose. May had cried when he told her. Violet had drawn him a picture of a superhero with blonde hair and a pink dress labeled, "Me Saving Andrew." It hung in Christopher's office. His phone buzzed, a text from Andrew, awake again, as he sometimes was when thoughts crowded his mind. "Dad, I just wanted to say thank you for never giving up, for believing I was alive when everyone said I wasn't, for loving me enough to keep searching even when it seemed impossible. You're my hero." Christopher's vision blurred as he typed back, "You're my hero, buddy. Your strength, your resilience, your ability to still love and trust after everything you've been through. That's what heroes are made of. I'm just the lucky dad who gets to be part of your story. We're part of each other's story. That's what makes it good. That's what makes it perfect. Now sleep, little astronaut. Tomorrow we're finishing that whale drawing and starting a new one. And starting a new one. We have lots of pictures to make. A lifetime of pictures. We have a lifetime of everything to do together." Christopher set his phone down and looked one more time at the stars. In the morning there would be breakfast, pancakes, Andrew's request. There would be homeschooling and tutors and therapy. There would be a video call with St. Mary's because Andrew wanted to read to the younger kids. There would be ordinary, beautiful, mundane life. And there would be challenges ahead. Healing wasn't linear. There would be nightmares and setbacks. There would be moments when the trauma surfaced unexpectedly. There would be hard days and difficult conversations, but they would face it together. Father and son. Lost and found. Broken and healing. Connected by love stronger than lies. Hope deeper than despair. And a bond that 3 years of separation hadn't been able to sever. Somewhere in the darkness, stars watched over them. Just as they always had. Just as they always would. And in the blue room down the hall, beneath a portrait marked with pink letters that read, "I'm alive, Daddy," a 10-year-old boy slept peacefully, dreaming of a future bright with possibility, finally truly permanently home. The torn portrait hadn't been destroyed after all. It had been transformed. The tear had become a doorway. The childish message had become a prophecy. And the story that seemed to end in tragedy had become a testament to the enduring power of a father's love. Some things once broken can never be repaired, can. But some things, when broken, become more beautiful in their healing. The Ashford family was one of those things, fractured by betrayal, scattered by lies, but ultimately reunited and made stronger by the journey back to each other. In the years to come, Andrew would indeed dedicate his life to helping lost children. He'd become a therapist specializing in childhood trauma. He'd expand the Andrew Ashford Foundation into a national organization. He'd meet a wonderful woman who understood his scars and loved him anyway. He'd have children of his own and tell them the story of how their grandfather never gave up, how a little girl with a pink marker saved a family, how love proved stronger than darkness. But that was all in the future. Tonight was enough. Tonight was everything. Christopher climbed into bed, finally allowing exhaustion to claim him. His last thought before sleep was a prayer of gratitude, to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had guided him to that orphanage, to Violet's innocent heart, to Andrew's resilient spirit. Thank you for bringing him home. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for proving that miracles are real. And somewhere in the night, if one listened very carefully, the universe whispered back, some bonds are eternal. Some loves are unbreakable. Some children are meant to find their way home. Always and forever. Home